17 years. That's how long Emily and I had been together. 17 years of love, laughter, and partnership. At least, that's what I thought. Life had its ups and downs like any marriage, but I always believed we were in it together. We built a life from scratch, and I never questioned the foundation. The cracks were there, but I didn't see them, or maybe I chose not to see them. We met in our early 20s, both eager to leave behind complicated pasts. Emily had been upfront about her history. She'd had children via a sperm donor before we met. Liam and Sophie were just toddlers when I came into the picture, and I loved them as if they were my own. Biology didn't matter to me. I was there for their first soccer games, their middle school heartbreaks, and every moment in between. We were a family, and I cherished every second of it. But in hindsight, maybe I should have questioned things sooner. It began small, a shift in Emily's behavior I initially dismissed. She'd always been glued to her phone, but lately it felt different. She laughed softly at texts, her screen angled away from me. She started making excuses to go out, lunches with friends, errands that took longer than usual, and catching up with old acquaintances. When I teased her about it, she'd wave me off with a light-hearted, "You're paranoid, babe." I wanted to believe her. One night, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling anymore. Emily was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message popped up, its preview impossible to miss. "Can't wait to see you again. I miss you already." My stomach twisted into a knot, and my hands trembled as I stared at the screen. My gut screamed at me to look, but my heart begged me not to. Against my better judgment, I picked up the phone and unlocked it. I told myself I was being crazy, that I'd find some harmless explanation. But what I found shattered my world. There were hundreds of messages between Emily and someone named Adam. At first, I thought it was just a fling, an emotional betrayal, sure, but something that might be explained or even forgiven. But the more I read, the worse it got. This wasn't just some guy. Adam wasn't a stranger. He was the biological father of my children. My mind raced as the pieces fell into place. Emily had used a sperm donor years ago. She'd told me that early in our relationship. But Adam wasn't some anonymous donor from a clinic. He was a real person. And somehow, Emily had reconnected with him. The texts revealed everything. They'd been seeing each other for months, meeting in hotels and sneaking around under the guise of catching up with an old friend. They talked about how much they loved each other, how they regretted the years they'd lost. But that wasn't the worst of it. The messages hinted at something darker, plans that made my blood run cold. "I've been thinking about the plan," one text from Adam read. "It has to look like an accident. He can't know what hit him." Emily had responded, "I know. But it has to be soon. I can't keep living like this. The kids deserve to know their real dad." I couldn't believe what I was reading. My wife and the man who had fathered my children were plotting to kill me. It felt like I was in a bad thriller movie, except this was my life. I wanted to storm into the bathroom and confront her right then and there. But something stopped me. If I confronted her, they might change their plans, or worse, act on them faster. Instead, I took screenshots of every message, every incriminating piece of evidence. Over the next few days, I played the part of the clueless husband. I went to work, made dinner, and kissed Emily goodnight as if nothing had changed. Inside, I was a mess. Every time I looked at her, I saw a stranger. Every time I hugged my kids, I wondered how they'd react when they found out the truth. I started digging deeper. I installed a hidden camera in the living room, where Emily often spoke to Adam over video calls. Watching them laugh and conspire together felt like a knife to the heart, but I forced myself to endure it. I needed every shred of evidence. I also began documenting her movements, noting the times she left the house and where she claimed to be going. Sure enough, her lies unraveled quickly. One night, Emily brought up the topic of our life insurance policy. It was a casual conversation at first. She asked if the policy was still active, something we hadn't discussed in years. Then she added, "You know, just in case something ever happens. It's good to be prepared." I froze, realizing this was more than idle curiosity. She was laying the groundwork for their plan. That night I barely slept. The rage inside me was unbearable, but I knew I couldn't let it consume me. If I took them off, I'd lose the upper hand. I needed to think carefully, plan meticulously. Revenge wasn't just about justice. It was about making them understand the depth of their betrayal. But I didn't want anyone to die. That would be too easy. No, I wanted them to live with the consequences of their actions. I started by reaching out to a lawyer, carefully outlining the situation without revealing too much. I also began compiling a digital folder of evidence, screenshots, videos, notes, ready to use if things escalated. But the most important step was convincing Emily and Adam that I was oblivious. I needed them to believe their plan was still intact. That was the only way to turn the tables. The hardest part was looking into my kids' eyes every day and pretending everything was fine. Liam and Sophie were my world, even if they weren't mine biologically. I couldn't bear the thought of them finding out what their mother had done, or what she planned to do. They deserved better than this chaos. As the days passed, I began to notice subtle shifts in Emily's behavior. She grew bolder, more confident, as if she truly believed she was fooling me. But what she didn't realize was that I was always one step ahead. I started planting seeds of doubt in her mind, small comments that made her second-guess herself. "I've been feeling a little off lately," I'd say. Or, "Do you ever think about what life would be like if one of us wasn't around?" Her reactions were telling: nervous laughter, quick subject changes, avoidance. I knew I was getting to her. But I couldn't stop there. I had to let the plan play out, to make her believe she was in control. Only then could I strike back. I wasn't just fighting for my life. I was fighting for the truth, for my kids, and for the 17 years I thought were real. And I wasn't going down without a fight. The days after discovering the truth felt like a surreal blur. I was walking a tightrope between keeping up appearances and secretly building my case against Emily and Adam. The weight of their betrayal was crushing, but I couldn't let emotions cloud my judgment. If I made one wrong move, they could turn their plans against me, and I'd lose everything, including my life. I started digging into Adam's background. Who was this man, beyond being the biological father of my children? With some online sleuthing, I uncovered more than I'd bargained for. Adam wasn't just some random guy who had donated sperm years ago. He was a drifter, someone who had bounced between jobs, relationships, and even a few run-ins with the law. He had a history of fraud and domestic violence, traits that painted a dangerous picture of the man I was up against. Meanwhile, I continued to monitor Emily. Every smile, every casual "How was your day?" felt like a dagger in my chest. But I played my role to perfection, acting like the loving, unsuspecting husband. I made dinner, helped the kids with their homework, and even planned a family movie night to keep up the facade. Emily seemed almost relieved by my behavior, as if it confirmed her belief that I was too clueless to see what was happening right under my nose. But behind the scenes, I was anything but clueless. I installed more hidden cameras in the house, including one in the garage and another in the kitchen. I also started recording our conversations, using a discreet app on my phone. Every word, every suspicious comment, became another piece of the puzzle I was putting together. One night, as I reviewed the footage from the hidden cameras, I caught something chilling. Emily had invited Adam over while I was at work. They sat in the living room, speaking in hushed tones, but the audio was clear enough to pick up their conversation. "It's taking too long," Adam said, his voice laced with frustration. "We need to move forward. He's not going to suspect anything. You said it yourself, he's too trusting." Emily hesitated, wringing her hands. "I know. But I'm scared, Adam. What if something goes wrong? What if the kids find out?" "They'll thank you eventually," Adam replied coldly. "You're doing this for them. They deserve to know their real father. And he's just in the way." The words felt like a punch to the gut. They spoke about me as if I were nothing more than an obstacle, something to be removed. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. I couldn't afford to act on impulse. Not yet. The next day, I decided to confront Adam, not directly, but in a way that would put him on edge. Using an anonymous number, I sent him a text. "I know what you're planning. Watch your back." The response was almost immediate. "Who is this?" he replied. "What are you talking about?" I didn't respond. Instead, I watched from the hidden camera as Emily received a call from Adam later that evening. His voice was frantic, his usual arrogance replaced by panic. "Someone knows, Emily," he said. "I got a message. They know about us." Emily tried to calm him down. "It's probably just spam or someone trying to scare you. No one knows." "You don't understand," Adam snapped. "If he finds out, everything falls apart. We need to act now." Emily's face paled, but she nodded. "Okay. We'll figure it out. Just give me some time to think." Their paranoia was exactly what I needed. If I could keep them off balance, they might make a mistake, something I could use to my advantage. Meanwhile, I began building alliances. I confided in a close friend, Mark, who worked as a private investigator. I didn't tell him everything, just enough for him to understand the seriousness of the situation. Mark agreed to help, setting up a surveillance operation to track Adam's movements. Within days, he uncovered something that made my blood run cold. Adam had purchased a gun. It was no longer a game of cat and mouse. This was real. They weren't just planning my death, they were preparing for it. But I wasn't going to make it easy for them. If they wanted to play dirty, I would outmaneuver them at every turn. One evening, as Emily and I sat together watching TV, I decided to test her. "I was thinking about taking a weekend trip," I said casually. "Just me. Clear my head, maybe do some hiking." She froze for a moment before forcing a smile. "That sounds great, honey. You deserve a break." Her reaction confirmed my suspicions. She didn't protest or question me, as she normally would. Instead, she seemed almost excited. It was clear she saw this as an opportunity. That night, I left my laptop open on purpose, with an email draft visible on the screen. The subject line read, "Life Insurance Policy Update." I watched from the corner of the room as Emily glanced at the screen, her expression shifting from curiosity to alarm. She quickly looked away, but I knew the seed had been planted. The next morning, Emily was unusually cheerful. She kissed me goodbye as I left for work, her smile wider than it had been in weeks. I could practically see the gears turning in her head. She thought her plan was falling into place. What she didn't know was that I had no intention of going on any trip. Instead, I'd arranged for Mark to follow her and Adam, documenting every move they made. I also set up a failsafe, a letter addressed to the police, detailing everything I had discovered, along with a USB drive containing the evidence. If anything happened to me, that letter would ensure they couldn't walk away unscathed. The next few days were a waiting game. Emily and Adam grew bolder, their confidence restored as they believed their plan was working. But I was always one step ahead, tracking their every move and preparing for the moment when I would finally confront them. It wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. It was about exposing the truth and making them face the consequences of their actions. They thought they were playing me, but they had no idea what was coming. The countdown had begun. Every second felt like a ticking bomb, and I knew Emily and Adam were circling closer to executing their twisted plan. But what they didn't know was that I had set the stage for them to fall into their own trap. I was playing a long, dangerous game, but I had something they didn't: clarity. The fog of my emotions had lifted, and I was laser-focused on the endgame, exposing their betrayal and watching their world fall apart. In the days leading up to my supposed weekend trip, I continued to act as if everything was normal. I kissed Emily on the forehead each morning, made Liam and Sophie breakfast, and even joked about how much I was looking forward to getting some fresh air in the mountains. Emily smiled through it all, but there was something in her eyes, a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. She thought victory was within her grasp. Little did she know, I had made arrangements to ensure I wouldn't be their victim. On the day of my planned departure, I packed a small bag to keep up appearances. I'll be back by Sunday evening, I said casually as I zipped up the duffel. Don't have too much fun without me. Emily kissed me on the cheek, a little too quickly, and forced a bright smile. Be safe, okay? I will, I promised, hiding the bitterness in my voice. As I stepped outside, I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on me. This was it, the point of no return. But instead of driving to the mountains, I drove to a safe house that Mark had arranged for me. It was a small, nondescript apartment on the other side of town, equipped with surveillance equipment and everything we needed to monitor Emily and Adam's next moves. From there, I could watch the hidden camera feeds from my house and keep tabs on their conversations. Within hours of my supposed departure, Adam arrived at my house. He didn't even bother to knock, he walked in like he owned the place. Emily greeted him with a kiss, and they sat down on the couch, their voices hushed but urgent. Is everything ready? Adam asked, his eyes darting around nervously. Emily nodded. He's gone. It's the perfect time. I clenched my fists, the rage bubbling beneath the surface. They were so confident, so sure they had outsmarted me. But I kept my emotions in check. I needed them to take the bait. Later that evening, they began making their move. Emily and Adam left the house together, driving to a remote location I had been tracking through Mark's surveillance team. It was an abandoned cabin in the woods, a place they had mentioned in their text messages as the site where they planned to stage my accident. The plan, as I understood it, was to lure me there under the pretense of a romantic surprise from Emily. Once there, they intended to make sure I never left. But they had no idea I was already a step ahead. I watched from the surveillance feed as they prepared the scene. They scattered debris around the cabin to make it look like a struggle had taken place. Adam even placed a bottle of whiskey on the table, intending to make it look like I had been drinking before my supposed accident. This has to be perfect, Adam muttered as he adjusted a piece of broken furniture. No mistakes. Emily nodded, her face pale but determined. It will be. He'll never see it coming. I almost laughed at the irony of her words. They were so focused on their plan that they couldn't see how badly they were about to fail. With everything in place, they returned to the house, waiting for the right moment to lure me into their trap. But that moment would never come. Instead, I decided it was time to confront them directly. The next day, I walked back into my house as if nothing had happened. Emily's eyes widened in shock when she saw me standing in the doorway. You're back early, she stammered, her face flushing. Yeah, I said coolly. Decided to cut the trip short. Got bored. Adam, who had been sitting in the living room, froze like a deer caught in headlights. Hey man, he said awkwardly. Didn't expect to see you. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Yeah, funny how plans change. For a moment, the tension in the room was palpable. Emily and Adam exchanged nervous glances, clearly trying to figure out what I knew. I let them stew in their anxiety for a few moments before delivering the first blow. I know everything, I said quietly. Emily's face went as white as a sheet. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and played one of the recordings I had saved, a snippet of their conversation about the plan to kill me. Adam's face twisted in fury, while Emily's eyes filled with tears. You were going to kill me, I said, my voice low and cold. You plotted to take my life and make it look like an accident. You thought I was too stupid to figure it out. Listen, Adam started, but I cut him off. Shut up, I snapped. I have everything recorded. Every text, every phone call, every meeting. You can't weasel your way out of this. Emily began to sob, collapsing onto the couch. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she cried. I didn't know what else to do. You didn't know what else to do? I repeated, incredulous. So you decided murder was the best option? Adam lunged forward as if he intended to grab my phone, but I was ready for him. I stepped back, pulling a small recording device from my pocket. Try anything, and I'll send this to the police right now, I warned. He stopped in his tracks, his face contorted with rage. "What do you want?" he spat. I stared at them both, my heart pounding. "I want you to confess," I said. "I want you to admit everything, to the kids, to everyone. And then I want you out of our lives." Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You can't do this," she whispered. "Please think about the kids." "I am thinking about them," I said. "That's why I'm giving you this chance. But if you don't take it, I'll make sure you both rot in prison." When Emily and Adam realized I knew about their plans, their world began to collapse right before my eyes. Their faces, pale as sheets, revealed more than any words could. They weren't prepared for the fact that not only was I alive, but I also knew every detail of their twisted plot. Emily broke into tears, stumbling over her words in a desperate attempt to explain. I didn't want it to go this far. It wasn't my plan," she sobbed, tears streaming down her face. "You didn't want this?" I snapped, my voice icy. "Then why did you spend months texting him about how much better life would be without me?" Adam, always the cocky one, stood silently, his mouth tight as he tried to calculate his next move. His usual arrogance had evaporated, leaving behind a man clearly out of his depth. "Listen," he began, raising his hands as if to placate me. "Everyone makes mistakes. Let's talk about this like adults." "Mistakes?" I raised an eyebrow. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, Adam. Plotting to kill someone? That's a whole different level, don't you think?" My calm logic disarmed him. He glanced at Emily, as if looking for backup, but she couldn't even meet his gaze. Her fear of me now outweighed any loyalty she felt toward him. "You have a choice," I said, holding up my phone with the evidence. "You can confess everything to the kids. Tell them the truth about who their real dad is and why their mother has been lying for months. Or I take this to the police, and the two of you face the hell you deserve." Emily broke into sobs again. "You can't do this to us. Think about Liam and Sophie." "I am thinking about them," I said firmly. "That's why I'm giving you this chance. They deserve the truth, and they deserve better than the mess you've made." Adam raised his voice, the anger flaring back in his eyes. "You're not going to ruin everything we've built. You're not as strong as you think you are." I let out a cold laugh, though my insides were burning with fury. "Strong? Adam, I've already won. You've already lost everything, you just don't realize it yet." This conversation was only the beginning. Emily and Adam tried to defend themselves, but I could see their resolve crumbling. My strategy wasn't just to expose them, it was to make them feel every ounce of the betrayal they had planned for me. The next morning, I forced them to sit down with me. They looked defeated, Emily still teary-eyed and Adam fidgeting uncomfortably. I laid everything out, every piece of evidence, every recording, and every text. "You planned to kill me," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "You wanted to erase me from this family, and now you think I'll just let you walk away? No. You're going to pay for what you've done." Emily's voice cracked as she tried to reason with me. "Please, just don't destroy the family. We can fix this." "Destroy the family?" I repeated, leaning forward. "You already did that the moment you decided my life wasn't worth anything to you. But I wasn't going to destroy my children's lives. That's why I gave them the ultimatum: confess to Liam and Sophie, or face the full force of the law." Their reactions were a mix of panic and desperation. They knew they had no way out, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in Adam's eyes. "What do you want from us?" he finally muttered, his voice low and defeated. "I want the truth," I said. "And I want you both gone from this house. Forever." Emily's lip trembled. "Where will I go? What will I do?" "That's your problem," I said coldly. "You made this mess. Now you get to live with the consequences." That night, I drafted a letter to Liam and Sophie, explaining the situation in terms they could understand. I didn't want to hurt them, but I also couldn't let them live in the dark. They deserved to know the truth about their mother and Adam. Before I handed it to them, I gave Emily and Adam one last chance to do the right thing. I gathered them in the living room and placed the letter on the table. "If you don't tell them everything by tomorrow," I said, "I will." The clock was ticking, and they knew it. Their house of lies was crumbling, and I was ready to watch it fall. The next morning, I woke up early and sat in the kitchen, waiting. The house was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and fills your chest with dread. Today was the day everything would come to light. Emily and Adam had until noon to tell Liam and Sophie the truth, or I would. Emily shuffled into the kitchen just after 7 a.m., her face pale and drawn. She looked like she hadn't slept at all, which was no surprise. Adam wasn't far behind, his usual swagger completely gone. He looked like a man facing his own execution. "Did you think about what I said?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. Emily nodded, her hands trembling as she gripped the back of a chair. "We'll tell them," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Adam glanced at her sharply, but she avoided his gaze. He opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off. "Good. You'll tell them this afternoon. I'll be here to make sure it's the whole truth." The hours leading up to that moment felt like an eternity. I stayed in the house, watching Emily and Adam pace nervously while Liam and Sophie went about their usual routines, blissfully unaware of the storm about to hit. Every time I looked at my kids, my heart broke a little more. They didn't deserve this. Finally, the clock struck noon. I called everyone into the living room, my stomach twisting into knots. Liam flopped onto the couch, his face buried in his phone, while Sophie sat cross-legged next to him, looking curious but unconcerned. "What's going on?" Liam asked, glancing up at me. I took a deep breath and gestured to Emily and Adam. "Your mom and Adam have something they need to tell you." Emily's hands fidgeted in her lap, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Adam sat stiffly next to her, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought his teeth might shatter. Neither of them spoke for several agonizing seconds. "Mom?" Sophie prompted, her voice tinged with worry. Emily finally found her voice, though it was shaky and weak. "There's something you need to know about Adam," she began, her eyes darting nervously between Liam and Sophie. Adam cleared his throat and leaned forward, his hands clasped together. I'm your biological father," he said bluntly, his eyes fixed on the floor. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Sophie blinked, her brow furrowing as if she hadn't quite understood. Liam sat up straighter, his phone forgotten in his lap. "What?" Liam asked, his voice sharp with confusion. Emily rushed to fill the silence. "It's true. Adam was a sperm donor, years ago, before I met your dad. But we reconnected recently and—" Her voice trailed off, as if she couldn't bring herself to say the rest. "And what?" Sophie pressed, her voice rising. I stepped in before Emily could stammer out another half-truth. "And they've been having an affair," I said flatly. "Behind my back. And worse, they were planning to kill me to be together." Sophie's jaw dropped, her eyes darting between Emily and Adam. "What? Is this some kind of joke?" Liam looked at me, his face a mixture of disbelief and anger. "Dad, that's not funny." "I'm not joking," I said, my voice heavy. "I have proof. I've seen the texts, the messages, even recordings of them talking about their plans." Emily began to sob openly, burying her face in her hands. "I'm so sorry," she choked out. "I never wanted this to happen. I didn't want to hurt anyone." Adam sat frozen, his face blank as he stared at the carpet. He looked like a man who had run out of excuses. Liam shot to his feet, his hands balled into fists. "Are you serious? You were going to kill Dad? What the hell is wrong with you?" "Liam, please," Emily began, but he cut her off. "No! You don't get to explain this away. You—" His voice broke, and he turned to me, his eyes full of anger and hurt. "Is this true?" I nodded, my heart breaking all over again. "I'm sorry, son. But yes, it's true." Sophie started crying, her hands covering her face as she rocked back and forth on the couch. Liam stood there, his chest heaving as he tried to process the unimaginable. How could you? He finally spat at Emily. How could you do this to us? To Dad? Emily reached out to him, but he jerked away. Don't touch me, he snapped, his voice trembling with rage. The room descended into chaos. Sophie's sobs filled the air as Liam yelled at Emily and Adam, his words sharp and unforgiving. Emily tried to calm him down, but her pleas only seemed to make him angrier. Through it all, Adam remained silent, his face a mask of regret and humiliation. He didn't even try to defend himself. Eventually, Liam stormed out of the room, slamming the door to his bedroom so hard the walls shook. Sophie followed shortly after, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. When they were gone, I turned to Emily and Adam, my voice cold and steady. You've done enough damage. Pack your things and get out of my house. Now. Emily looked up at me, her eyes wide with shock. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care, I said. You lost the right to ask me for anything the moment you decided my life was expendable. Adam stood slowly, his face still blank. Come on, he muttered to Emily. Let's go. They left the house without another word, leaving behind the wreckage of everything we built together. As the door closed behind them, I sank onto the couch, my body heavy with exhaustion. The truth was out, but the fallout had only just begun. After Emily and Adam walked out the door, the house felt impossibly quiet. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on me like a suffocating blanket. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't focused on evidence, surveillance, or plans. Now, it was about dealing with the aftermath, repairing the lives they had shattered. I found Liam in his room, sitting on the edge of his bed with his head in his hands. His phone lay abandoned on the floor, and his knuckles were white from clenching his fists. He didn't look up when I knocked on the doorframe. Liam, I said softly, stepping inside. Just don't, he muttered, his voice thick with anger and pain. I can't believe this is real. I sat down next to him, careful to give him space. I wish it wasn't, I said. I wish none of this had happened. But it's not your fault, and I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. He looked at me then, his eyes red and filled with confusion. How could she do this? To you? To us? I had no easy answers. I don't know, son. I've been asking myself the same thing. She was supposed to care about us, he said, his voice cracking. She lied to us our whole lives. She made terrible choices, I said carefully. But that doesn't change how much I love you and Sophie. You're my kids no matter what. Liam sniffed and nodded, though he didn't say anything more. I stayed with him for a while, just sitting in silence, letting him process everything. Sophie was curled up on her bed, tears streaking her face. She looked so small, so fragile, that it broke my heart all over again. Dad? She whispered as I sat down beside her. I'm here, I said, pulling her into a hug. Why would she do this? Sophie asked, her voice trembling. Doesn't she love us? She does, I said, though the words felt bitter on my tongue. She made some terrible decisions, but that doesn't mean she stopped loving you. Sometimes people lose their way. But she tried to hurt you, Sophie said, looking up at me with tearful eyes. She wanted to kill you. How can you forgive her for that? I don't know if I can, I admitted. But I'm not going to let what she did ruin us. We're going to get through this together. Over the next few days, the three of us tried to adjust to our new reality. Emily didn't try to come back, which was a relief. Adam also stayed away, though I had no doubt he was licking his wounds somewhere, planning his next move. I made sure the house was secure and stayed in contact with my lawyer and Mark, my investigator, just in case. For Liam and Sophie, it was a roller coaster of emotions. They were angry, hurt, and confused, but slowly, they began to lean on me, and each other, for support. We spent more time together than we had in years, cooking meals, watching movies, and talking late into the night. It wasn't easy, but it was a start. One evening, As we sat around the dinner table, Sophie looked up at me with a determined expression. "Are they going to get away with it?" she asked. "Not if I can help it," I said. Mark had uncovered more dirt on Adam in the days since their confession. His history of fraud, violence, and shady dealings painted a clear picture of the kind of man he was. With the evidence I had gathered, I was building a solid case against him, and Emily, if it came to that. But I wasn't just thinking about legal consequences. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they had done. They had taken everything I thought I knew about my life and burned it to the ground. They had tried to erase me, not just physically, but emotionally, by taking my place in the family I had spent 17 years building. I wouldn't let them succeed. The next step was ensuring my children were protected. I spoke to a therapist who specialized in family trauma, setting up sessions for all three of us. Liam was resistant at first, but Sophie seemed eager to talk to someone who wasn't directly involved. I knew it would be a long road to healing, but we had to start somewhere. Meanwhile, I worked with Mark to keep tabs on Emily and Adam. They were still in contact, though their relationship seemed strained. According to Mark's surveillance, they were staying at a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, arguing frequently. Emily looked defeated, while Adam seemed angrier than ever. "They're unraveling," Mark told me during one of our check-ins. "Adam's not used to losing, and Emily's guilt is eating her alive. It's only a matter of time before they turn on each other." That thought gave me a grim sense of satisfaction. They deserved to feel the weight of their betrayal. One evening, I received a text from Emily. It was the first time she had reached out since leaving the house. "Can we talk? Please. I need to see the kids." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "Not now. They're not ready." She responded almost immediately. "I'm so sorry. For everything. Please, just give me a chance to explain." I didn't reply. I couldn't. There was nothing she could say that would undo the damage she had caused. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to feel a glimmer of hope. The road ahead was long, but I was determined to rebuild what they had tried to destroy. My kids and I would find our way through this, together. But as I closed my phone, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over yet. Emily and Adam might have been defeated, but they weren't finished. Not by a long shot. As the weeks went on, I kept my guard up. Emily's texts became more frequent, shifting from apologies to pleas for forgiveness. Adam, on the other hand, remained silent, which only made me more uneasy. Mark continued to monitor them, reporting their movements and conversations. The tension between Emily and Adam was escalating. What had once been a united front was now fracturing under the weight of their failure. "Adam's not handling this well," Mark told me during one of our late-night calls. "He's angry. He blames Emily for the mess they're in." Good. Let them turn on each other, I thought. It was poetic justice. Meanwhile, I focused on building a stronger life for Liam, Sophie, and me. Therapy sessions became a cornerstone of our healing process. Liam was still guarded, but he started opening up little by little. Sophie, the more emotionally expressive of the two, found comfort in talking about her feelings. "I hate her," Sophie said one evening after a session. "I hate what she did to you. To us. You have every right to feel that way," I said gently. "But don't let that hate consume you. It's okay to be angry, but we need to focus on moving forward." Sophie nodded, though I could see the hurt still lingering in her eyes. As we worked on rebuilding our family, I stayed vigilant. I knew Adam wasn't the type to give up easily. He had already proven he was willing to go to extreme lengths to get what he wanted. One night, Mark called with news that sent a chill down my spine. "Adam's been asking around about you," he said. "He's been trying to find out where you've been going, who you've been talking to. It's like he's planning something." "What do you think he's up to?" I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. "I don't know yet, but it's not good," Mark replied. "You need to be careful. He's dangerous when he feels cornered." I hung up the phone, my mind racing. It wasn't enough that I had exposed their betrayal and driven them out of my house. Adam wanted revenge. The next day, I installed additional security measures around the house. Cameras, motion sensors, and reinforced locks. I also spoke to the police, sharing the evidence I had collected. While they couldn't act on Adam's past threats without more immediate proof, they assured me that they would keep a close watch. Days passed without incident, but the tension was palpable. Every time I stepped outside, I felt like I was being watched. Every phone call from an unknown number made my heart race. I refused to let my guard down. Then, one night, everything came to a head. It was late, well past midnight, when I heard a noise outside. At first, I thought it was my imagination. But then I heard it again, a faint rustling, like someone moving through the bushes near the side of the house. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the live feed from the security cameras. Sure enough, there was a figure moving near the garage. My heart pounded as I recognized Adam. He was dressed in dark clothing, his face partially obscured by a hood. He carried something in his hand, a crowbar, I realized with a sinking feeling. I dialed 911, whispering the situation to the operator while keeping my eyes on the screen. "There's a man outside my house," I said. "I know who he is, and he's dangerous. Please send someone quickly." The operator assured me that officers were on their way. In the meantime, I stayed put, watching as Adam tried to force the side door open. The door held firm, thanks to the reinforcements I had installed, but that didn't stop him. He moved to one of the windows, peering inside as if searching for me. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it, the moment I had been preparing for. Suddenly, the sound of sirens filled the air. Adam froze, his head whipping toward the street as red and blue lights illuminated the yard. He dropped the crowbar and took off running, but it was too late. The police were already closing in. I watched from the window as officers tackled Adam to the ground, handcuffing him as he yelled and struggled. When the commotion died down, one of the officers approached the door to take my statement. I showed them the security footage, which clearly captured Adam's attempted break-in. Combined with the evidence of his prior threats, it was more than enough to press charges. As they hauled Adam away, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. He was finally out of our lives, for good. The next day, I received a text from Emily. "I heard what happened. I'm sorry. I had no idea he would do something like that." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say to her. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. The immediate danger was gone, and I could finally focus on what truly mattered, healing and moving forward with Liam and Sophie. But I knew this wasn't the end. The scars of what Emily and Adam had done would take time to fade. Trust would take even longer to rebuild. As I sat with my kids that evening, watching a movie and laughing at Sophie's sarcastic commentary, I realized something important: we had survived. Despite everything, we were still standing. And that was the ultimate revenge. In the weeks following Adam's arrest, life slowly began to return to something resembling normalcy. The immediate threat was gone, but the emotional wreckage he and Emily had left behind was still very real. Liam and Sophie were struggling to process everything, and I was doing my best to support them while grappling with my own pain. Adam was being held without bail, thanks to the overwhelming evidence I had provided. His attempted break-in, coupled with the texts and recordings of his threats, left him with little room to maneuver. The prosecutor assured me that he was facing a long prison sentence, which brought me some comfort. Emily, on the other hand, was harder to reconcile. She stayed away, respecting my demand that she not contact the kids directly. Her texts to me became less frequent, though she still tried to explain herself. "I don't expect forgiveness," one message read. "But I do hope, someday, you can understand that I made mistakes because I was lost. I never stopped loving you or the kids." I stared at that message for a long time before deleting it. Her words felt hollow, meaningless after everything she had done. Loving us wasn't enough, not when she had been willing to destroy me and break our family apart for her own selfish desires. The hardest part was watching Liam and Sophie grapple with their feelings about their mother. They had been so close to her, and now they didn't know how to reconcile the woman who had raised them with the one who had betrayed us all. "I don't even know who she is anymore," Liam said one night as we sat on the back porch. The cool night air wrapped around us, and the stars above seemed almost mocking in their calmness. "She's still your mom," I said carefully. "But that doesn't mean you have to forgive her right away. Or at all. It's okay to feel angry, hurt, or confused. Whatever you're feeling is valid. I feel stupid for not seeing it," he admitted, his voice cracking. "You're not stupid," I said firmly. "She fooled all of us. That's on her, not you." Sophie, meanwhile, had retreated into herself. She spoke less and spent more time in her room, drawing or journaling. I made sure to check in with her daily, but I also gave her the space she needed. One day, she came to me with her journal in hand. "Dad," she said hesitantly, "I wrote something. Can I read it to you?" "Of course," I said, sitting beside her on the couch. She opened the journal to a page filled with neat handwriting and began to read. It was a letter to her mother, raw and heartfelt. She wrote about her anger, her sadness, and her sense of betrayal. But she also wrote about the memories they had shared and her hope that, someday, she might be able to understand why Emily had done what she did. When she finished, tears were streaming down her face. I pulled her into a hug, my own eyes misty. "That was beautiful, Sophie," I said. "You're so strong to put your feelings into words like that." "Do you think I should send it to her?" she asked. "That's up to you," I said. "But if you do, it should be for your own healing, not hers." Sophie nodded, and I could see a hint of resolution in her eyes. As time passed, we began to rebuild our lives. Therapy sessions became a weekly routine, and slowly but surely, we started to find our footing again. I threw myself into being there for my kids in every way possible, making sure they knew they could always count on me. We also found new ways to bond as a family. We started cooking together more often, experimenting with recipes and laughing at our failed attempts. We went on hikes, explored new parts of the city, and even adopted a dog, a golden retriever we named Daisy, who quickly became the heart of our home. Through it all, I found strength in my role as a father. Liam and Sophie were my world, and knowing that I could still protect and guide them gave me purpose. One afternoon, I received a letter from Emily. It wasn't a text or an email, an actual handwritten letter. I debated throwing it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. In the letter, she apologized again, though her words felt more genuine this time. She wrote about her guilt and how she was working on herself, trying to understand why she had made the choices she did. She didn't ask for forgiveness or to see the kids. Instead, she simply expressed her hope that, one day, we could all find peace. I didn't respond. The wounds were still too fresh, and I wasn't ready to open that door. But I tucked the letter away, unsure if I'd ever need it, but unwilling to discard it entirely. Months turned into a year. By then, Adam had been sentenced to prison, and Emily had moved to another state to start over. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and we were determined to make the most of it. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Liam looked up at me and said, "You know, Dad, I think we're going to be okay." I smiled, my chest swelling with pride. "Yeah," I said. "I think we are." And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed it.